Hello, good morning. My name is Udwaka Mimo, and this is Cheche, the show where opinion counts, live on Citizen TV. Now, insecurity and corruption, we're told, are the chief concerns of Kenyans today. There is plenty more to concern us about the state of the nation. The personal challenge, that is the International Criminal Court trial of President Uhuru Kenyatta, legislation passed by a National Assembly that some see as rogue. To put those issues into the perspectives their respective parties hold, we have nominated MP Johnson Sakaja. He is the national chairman of TNA, part of the governing Jubilee coalition. And speaking for the opposition Chord alliance, we have Suba MP John Mbadi, who is a member of the ODM party. And for our panel today, we have Mutegi Njau of Royal Media Services. David Makali is away pursuing political ambitions. Good morning and welcome to the program. Insecurity, we're told, is the biggest challenge. But before we come to that, I'd like to get a sense of where you think, how you think Kenya is doing from where you sit. I'll start with you, Mr. Sakaja.
Thank you very much. I'd like to say that we have just come from an election, I think now 8 months. There are certain challenges, definitely, that the country is facing, quite a number. We've moved from crisis after crisis to another crisis. We have issues of insecurity that have been there. Contrary to what some people are saying, insecurity was not launched with this coalition. It has been there. But we've seen a certain rise in insecurity, a lot of issues of road carnage, and a lot of issues in the diplomatic circles that we're dealing with. So I must say challenging times, but I'm still optimistic. We have a new government with new energy. We have a very vibrant parliament. Despite the issues you might see that might come up once in a while between National Assembly and Senate, there is reason to hope for good legislation and for better times for Kenyans.
Okay, and Mr. Mbadi, your perspective on the state of the nation?
Yeah, let me say that any new government takes time to settle, but I think this government is taking too long to settle. For a government that has barely 48 months to be in office, taking 8 months to settle is, to me, in my view, too long. Look at what is happening around the insecurity. It is true, as Honorable Sakaja puts it, that insecurity was not born with the new government. But I think the level at which it has reached is completely unacceptable. Look at the cost of living, which this government actually promised to address. What are we seeing? Rise in cost of living, legislations which don't help reduce the cost of basic commodities, and more importantly, retrogression in terms of the gains that we have made in democratization. What you see are evidence of a sliding back to those years that we came from. Actually, if we are not careful, if we continue at this rate, within 6 months we may find ourselves to the 1980s.
Okay, yeah. So we'll start with insecurity then. Mr. Sakaja, you say it was not a gift from the Jubilee government. It's always existed. But let's look at what's happened in the last couple of months. We've had an MP's parents killed. In the last week, an Australian shot dead by people in security uniforms. A shootout, again, with people in uniform during a foiled robbery attempt. Muslim clerics killed, pastors killed, to the extent that they want to arm themselves with guns, threatening leaflets in Kisumu County, Westgate. How can we not say that the government has failed to secure Kenyans?
I think it's a combination of a number of issues. First, I concur, yes. The biggest mandate, or even if you say the primary function of a government, is to secure its people. And which is why the president is commander-in-chief of defense forces as part of his title. That is a primary mandate of a government. And yes, insecurity has escalated. But let us look at what are the real issues. With the new constitution being implemented and the county structure, when you go to the counties, you realize there is no real command structure. And those are some of the things that need to be ironed out through legislation. You find you have the county commander, you have the OCPD, you have other officers at the same rank who are refusing to work together. You have the APs who are saying, no, we cannot take instruction from this other branch of the police. So really, we must get serious and sort out the systemic issues with the police. There have been issues of infrastructure within the police. And as you saw last week, the president launched the issue of police vehicles, 200 vehicles that are on lease, going up to 1,000. There's an issue of how our agencies work together. I think we saw during Westgate maybe some mishap between the defense forces and the police service. So all those are things that we need to work on. But really, I must say, because when you talk about security, there is no partisan line on security. Security affects us all. We must really check on the police to make sure that they're serious on their work, because it is the same laxity that leads to road carnage, you know, because they're the ones who enforce.
But I think myself, in my view is that maybe the president is held at ransom. If you look at top people, there has been wrangling, which he has not been able to solve between the police, National Police Commission and the Inspector General. When Westgate took place, the president had go to the GSU to modify them. When it comes to vetting, we want to have policemen refusing to be vetted. It's only now, after a long time.
You see,
I'm seeing, is he not able to be commander-in-chief?
You know, there's a difference when you look at the defense forces and the police, even in terms of the Constitution. Article 245 is very clear that the IG cannot be influenced or just commanded, you know, by anybody. There are a set of institutions that have been put out by the Constitution, especially when you look at the Police Service Commission, that need to play their role. But I think what we need to do as legislators is make sure that there is a very clear chain of command, there is very clear policy on recruitment, policy on deployment, and we address the issues of infrastructure and even the morale within the police. Because unless we deal with those things, it is not that when something happens in Mbadi's constituency, the president will pick a phone and tell Kimayo to send people there. These are institutions that need to run the way they're supposed to run. And if any of those people are not performing, I think we will not hesitate to spare anybody.
Okay.
But why is it that the president promised he's going to set up an inquiry to find out what happened at Westgate and he has not?
He promised he will set up an inquiry. We know the forensic audit is still going on, because the results of the forensic audit will actually determine part of the terms of reference.
It cannot be going on. Why?
It is still going on.
Right. Mr. Mbadi, just a minute. We'll get your take on the security problems, because you're outlining issues that we are familiar with as Kenyans. And I think what Kenyans would like to know is, where is the action? Now, in today's papers, we see, you know, you talked about morale, police officers getting salaries, increments in salaries. I think last month they had their allowances brought in. But we still have the issue of morale, and as Mr. Sakaja pointed out, interagency communication and collaboration.
Yeah, let me agree first with Honorable Sakaja that actually, if you read Article 131 of the Constitution, the authority of the President, there are three key or critical authorities that are given to the President of the Republic of Kenya. Number one is the Commander-in-Chief of the Kenya Defense Forces. Number two is the Chairman of the National Security Council. And then number three is the symbol of national unity, in that order. If you look at the first two, they are touching on security. And therefore, if there is lapse in security, the people of Kenya takes it to the doorstep of the President, because this is the person they elected into office to help them have a secure country. And that is why countries form themselves into countries. The societies form themselves into countries to be able to govern themselves and to protect themselves from aggression, both external and internal. And therefore, if there is complete breakdown and failure in security, the person we hold accountable is the President. We do know there could be those disjointed elements in the security forces, but who is the chairman of the National Security Council? It is the President. If something is not working, it is upon the President now to tell us how to move and progress forward. But there are certain things that have happened that really defeats logics. For example, the Westgate. The Westgate case is a classical example of a complete breakdown in security system. In broad daylight, in the middle of the city, gunmen coming courageously, holding our forces.
4 of them.
For days is completely unacceptable. Whether you call it morale, whether you call it lack of equipment, whether you call it what, it is completely unacceptable. And it is high time that we tell the President he is the one in charge of the security. Not Olelenku, not anybody else, not Rachel Obama. It is not IG. It is the President. He is the chairman of the National Security. If there is disconnect between maybe our defense forces and the police, who is to account to that? It is the president. Why? Because he's the chairman which brings all these bodies together.
So what grade would you give the government on security if you were grading them?
On security?
Yes.
A D if they are lucky.
D, a fail.
Yes.
Sakaja?
I would not know the parameters on which to grade a government on security, but let me say this. The president is aware definitely that he is the buck stops at him when you talk about security. And I think we have seen certain actions that he is making with respect to security. I've talked about the issue of infrastructure, I've spoken about the issue of morale, and just bringing these agencies together to be able to work better. We have seen government sponsoring an amendment to the Police Service Act and also to the Police Service Commission Act. And some of these raft of measures, really, we look forward to them sorting out the issues of security. We've seen the introduction of this initiative called Nyumba Kumi, because I think it's part of security. And I was very disappointed to see yesterday that our colleagues were saying that Nyumba Kumi is taking us back to a police state. And really, if we...
Actually, they say it's unconstitutional. There should have been public consultation, given that it will be funded through public...
then that becomes a double speak, because if Mbadi is saying that the buck stops at the president on security, and then now we're saying, no, let's consult first, really. We cannot consult more than...
Okay, well, let's come to you then and get your thoughts on Nyumba Kumi.
This issue of Nyumba Kumi to me is a reaction out of frustration, and I don't know for what reason. If you look at our system, the Jubilee government has just failed to utilize what we are provided for. We made an amendment, we made a legislation just before the end of 10th Parliament, where we made the governors to be chairing securities of counties, because we do know the security is a national function. But if you read the Constitution, the county government, especially the governor with his executive, also has an executive role. And the executive role cannot go without security. I do not know the kind of fear that Jubilee government has on governors and the county governments. Why don't you, instead of creating amorphous structures, which we are not very sure of, and which we have no evidence of a research conducted to identify whether they are workable or not. Why don't you use the structure?
But why Mr. Mbadi, Honorable, why would you want to invent a wheel? Kubi works elsewhere.
We're told that it's worked in... we're told that it works in Tanzania. We're told that it works in Uganda.
It works in the US with the neighborhood watches.
Right. I know that it works in Ethiopia. And the principle is that if neighborhoods, if families and neighborhoods knew each other, group them into 10 households, we would be able to tell who comes in, who goes out, if there's anything alarming that we need to be watching out for.
It is okay to come up with systems where neighbors watch over themselves.
Community policing,
that is okay.
yes.
That's all right. But the question I'm asking is, why are we ignoring the structures that are already in place?
Why is it either or?
Yes. Exactly. It is not that only one approach will give us a solution to security. We must look at all approaches. In the issue of constitutionality, if you look at Article 244 of the Constitution 4, it talks about involving the society in providing security solutions. I'll read it to you later, word for word. If I do not know my neighbor, and my children are going to play there, and maybe they're being recruited into Al-Shabaab or into a criminal gang, is that really security? Government cannot on its own deal with the issue of security without citizens' participation. And I think even the move to have probably more civilians becoming licensed firearm owners and trained will actually help to some extent. We're not shifting the responsibility of securing Kenyans. What we're saying is that for us to secure Kenyans, we need to work together on it. So on Nyumba Kumi, I'm unequivocal on that it is one of the avenues through which we can work together. If you look at our history in the past, and Mutegi will tell you, you used to know your neighbor, you'd go there and borrow salt, you'd go there and borrow water, you know what your neighbor does for a living, where he works, which school the children go to. Right now, and you're talking about Westgate, those people were staying somewhere in Nairobi. They had neighbors. They were here for many months, but nobody knew them because we do not care about who our neighbors are. Maybe because of the economy, we become competitive.
But how feasible is that, given that I think in either today or yesterday's papers, you hear that in the lower income neighborhoods that might work, but in the upper and middle income neighborhoods that wouldn't work because people treasure their privacy.
No, but even in places like Runda, They have their communities.
They have resident associations.
Resident association.
You just convert the resident associations into Nyumba Kumi formations. And Nyumba Kumi doesn't necessarily need to be, you know, specifically 10 houses, but just a configuration through which we have accountability on each other. But on the issue of us going against the structures that are set out, part of the problem has been the duplication of work in security. That the governor, the one to chair the security committee in the county. You have the county commander, who's also giving direction. You have the county commissioner giving direction. You have the administration police head in the county giving direction. I think we must streamline security.
Okay.
But there must be a single chain of command.
But the question is, and where I get a bit surprised by the reasoning by my colleague and Sakaja, who is my friend, who do you blame for this? You see, the Constitution has provided that within 5 years, this government should restructure the system that used to be known as provincial administration to fit with the current devolved system of government.
Yes.
We are 3 years after the promulgation of the Constitution. What stops the Jubilee government from, instead of coming up with the legislations to regulate the funding of NGOs, to bring